We're on the edge of another shortage crisis in the US, and this time, it's not caused by a pandemic. It's triggered by a single policy decision, being a 25% tariff on Canadian imports. That one move threatens to unravel the supply chains Americans depend on for their daily lives, starting with toilet paper and quickly spreading to groceries, gas, medication, and more. Canada supplies over half of the pulp used in US toilet paper. With rising costs and strained logistics, empty shelves could return faster than anyone expects. This isn't a distant possibility, it's a growing reality, and the question now isn't whether it will affect us, but how soon. The trade war nobody voted for. On the surface, it looks like just another policy shift, a 25% blanket tariff on all imports from Canada. To the average person, it might not seem like a big deal, but dig a little deeper and the impact becomes impossible to ignore. Canada isn't just another name on our trade list. It's America's largest trading partner, with over $700 billion worth of goods and services crossing the border each year. That relationship fuels industries, stabilizes supply chains, and keeps everyday essentials flowing into US homes. So this time, we're not taxing a rival like China, we're taxing ourselves. And when those tariffs hit raw materials like wood pulp, the consequences get personal fast. That pulp, it's what gives toilet paper its softness, its strength, and its availability on the shelves. Interrupt that flow and the effects won't stay in the headlines. They'll show up right in your home. Why toilet paper is the canary in the coal mine. Over 51% of all US wood pulp imports come from Canada. That may sound like a dry statistic at first, but it's far more than trivia. It's infrastructure. That pulp isn't just sitting in warehouses, it's being used every single day to produce something as essential as toilet paper. And when that supply gets disrupted, the effects trickle down quickly and visibly. Toilet paper is a uniquely emotional product. It's not flashy, it's not glamorous, but it's personal. Every household needs it, every day. It became one of the defining images of the 2020 crisis, not because of its utility, but because its absence symbolized the collapse of normalcy. When shelves went bare, it wasn't just about hygiene, it was about control, security, and certainty vanishing overnight. Jean-François Samray, CEO of the Quebec Forest Industry Council, put it plainly: the softness, the strength, it all comes from up north. If tariffs hold, the costs go straight to US consumers. And those costs, they're not months away, they're weeks, sometimes days away from reaching retail shelves. So what actually happens when those Canadian imports slow to a trickle? Prices spike, sometimes overnight. Retailers scramble to keep up, placing emergency orders that cost more and arrive slower. That leads to panic buying, a behavior rooted not in logic, but in fear. People rush to the stores, filling carts with as much as they can find, convinced they'll be left behind if they don't act now. And just like that, the shelves empty out, again. If this sounds familiar, it's because we've been here before. And just like last time, the real danger isn't the lack of a single product, it's what that shortage represents. Toilet paper is often the first to go, not because it's the rarest, but because it's the most visible symbol of a system breaking down. It's the canary in the coal mine. And when it stops showing up, it's already too late. Toilet paper might be the first sign, but it's far from the only one. What most people miss about supply chains. The real story is much bigger. What starts with one product often signals a domino effect, quietly spreading across industries we rarely connect until it's too late. These tariffs don't just hit the pulp that goes into your bathroom essentials. They extend to packaging, the boxes your online orders arrive in, to lumber, used to build homes, renovate offices, and produce furniture, to pharmaceuticals, where raw materials and packaging components come from north of the border, and yes, even to car parts, electronics, and the very systems that keep our food supply chain moving. Canada supplies the raw goods. The US turns them into finished products. It's a tightly woven partnership built over decades of trade and trust. But with a sudden tariff slapped onto critical imports, that system begins to unravel, not just slowly, but instantly. Factories across the US rely on Canadian materials to stay operational. These aren't luxuries, they're the lifeblood of manufacturing. Without them, production slows, then stops. And when that happens, it's not just a product that disappears, it's the job behind it. The assembly line worker, the freight driver, the small business owner waiting on stock that never arrives. You don't just lose goods, you lose productivity, you lose economic momentum, all from a single policy, and the fallout spreads across thousands of American lives. That's what most people miss about supply chains. They're invisible until they break, and by the time they do, the damage is already done. It's already happening. If you think these tariffs are just political threats or economic theory, think again. The ripple effects have already begun, and all you have to do is look north to see it. In Windsor, Ontario, one of Canada's key automotive hubs, the Stellantis auto plant has shut down. This isn't a warning or a future projection, it's real. Overnight, thousands of workers were told to stay home. Production lines were halted. Economic activity froze in an instant. The reason? Canadian retaliation. In response to the US imposing a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, Canada struck back, targeting US vehicles with their own heavy-handed tariffs. The result was swift and severe. Thousands of livelihoods disrupted, entire supply chains thrown into uncertainty. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't mince words. He stated, "We will not stand by as the US destabilizes our shared economic foundation." It was more than just political rhetoric. It was a declaration. Canada won't accept economic aggression without fighting back. And now, both sides are digging in. This isn't diplomacy, it's a standoff. Each country escalating with new trade barriers, trying to protect their own industries while unintentionally hurting the very people they claim to defend. Caught in the middle are the workers, families, and consumers, those who have nothing to do with trade policy but feel the impact most directly. From Windsor to Detroit, from corporate boardrooms to grocery store aisles, the fallout is spreading, and it's happening faster than most realize. The shutdown in Windsor is just the beginning. As trade tensions escalate, the consequences won't stay confined to factories or foreign headlines. What this means for your family budget. According to economists, these tariffs could cost the average US household an estimated $3,800 more per year. That's not just a bump in your grocery bill or a few extra dollars at the gas station. That's a major hit to your family budget. To put it in perspective, that's the equivalent of a month's rent in many cities, or the cost of a brand new refrigerator when yours finally gives out. For families with kids, that's an entire year of school supplies, gone in added costs you didn't ask for, and likely didn't even see coming. And here's the scary part. Most Americans won't even know why it's happening. They won't connect the dots between a policy passed in Washington and the slow, painful stretch of their monthly budget. But they'll feel it. At the register, at the pump, in the pantry. The prices will creep up, the bills will grow heavier, and many won't realize the cause was a chain reaction that started with a tariff. A single decision with a very real cost, paid by everyday people just trying to keep up. Why panic is a pattern. When families start to feel the squeeze, when their budgets are stretched thin and essential items inch further out of reach, anxiety sets in. The higher the price climbs, the more urgent the purchases feel, and that urgency, it becomes contagious. Remember March 2020? People weren't loading carts with 300 rolls of toilet paper because they needed that much. They were buying it because they were afraid of not having any at all. That fear wasn't logical, but it was powerful. This behavior has a name: loss aversion. It's a basic survival instinct hardwired into us. The pain of losing something, especially something essential, feels far more intense than the joy of gaining it. And in uncertain times, that instinct kicks in hard. All it takes is a rumor of scarcity, a whisper of rising prices or empty shelves, for panic to take over. And when the item in question is tied to hygiene, health, or food, the emotional response becomes even more intense. People don't wait to verify, they stockpile first and ask questions later. This isn't about supply chains breaking overnight, it's about people breaking first. Because in moments like these, it's not logic driving decisions, it's fear. And that fear doesn't just spread, it accelerates. And once it starts, it's incredibly hard to stop. The problem with quick fixes. Fear-driven panic isn't the only predictable pattern. Another one often follows close behind: the rush for a quick fix. Some might say, well, why don't we just make more toilet paper here? And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. In fact, it's partly true. The United States does produce around 90% of its own toilet paper. So problem solved, right? Not quite. Here's the kicker. While we manufacture the final product domestically, a large portion of the raw pulp needed to make that toilet paper, specifically the soft, high-quality variety, still comes from Canada. It's the backbone of what gives toilet paper its softness, durability, and overall usability. Without that key ingredient, American factories can't maintain the same level of quality or output. The machines don't stop, but what comes out isn't what we're used to. Production slows, costs rise, the end product thinner, rougher, more expensive, and far less available. So no, this isn't simply a matter of cranking up local manufacturing. It's not a production issue. It's a material issue. And when the materials stop flowing, even the best factories in the world can't keep up. Quick fixes feel good in a crisis, but they rarely solve the root problem, and in this case, the root lies north of the border. The chain reaction no one talks about. As we've seen, this issue goes far beyond just manufacturing toilet paper. When raw materials become scarce or expensive, it doesn't just disrupt production, it sends shockwaves through the entire economy. When one sector slows, others inevitably follow. Higher costs force companies to raise prices. Price hikes lead consumers to cut back on spending. Lower demand pushes factories to scale down production. Reduced output results in job losses. And job losses, they trigger a broader economic slowdown. It's a domino effect, simple cause and effect, repeated across dozens of industries. And the impact doesn't stop at bathroom essentials. It reaches builders who suddenly can't get the lumber they need. It reaches restaurants struggling to source paper goods and packaging. It affects pharmacies relying on Canadian-produced materials to bottle and distribute medication. This isn't about one product vanishing from the shelves. It's about the fragile web of industries that keep daily life functioning. A web that can start to unravel with just one policy change. Because at its core, this isn't a story about tariffs. It's a story about how the smallest shifts in trade can disrupt the foundation of everyday life, quietly but completely. Why the market is nervous, and you should be too. While consumers feel the impact in the checkout line, the financial world reacts in a very different way. Wall Street doesn't panic over toilet paper, but it absolutely does panic over policy instability. This new tariff isn't just about economics. It sends a much deeper message to global markets, that the rules of trade, once thought to be stable, can now shift overnight, that longtime allies like Canada can quickly become the targets of economic aggression, and that even long-standing trade agreements offer no real guarantee of peace or predictability. Investors hate uncertainty. It makes long-term planning impossible. It shakes trust. So what do? They pull out. They retreat. They sit on the sidelines instead of putting money into businesses that now look riskier than ever. And when that happens, markets begin to wobble, stock values dip, business confidence erodes, expansion plans are paused, hiring freezes begin. Suddenly, what started as a single trade maneuver snowballs into something far more serious, a recession trigger. This is why economists and investors are paying attention, because they know what comes next. If trust in economic stability disappears, the market doesn't wait, it reacts. And that reaction, it hits all of us. So what do you do now? Let's bring this home. Everything we've covered, every shortage, shutdown, and price hike isn't meant to create panic. This video isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because awareness leads to preparation, and preparation is power, so what can you do? First, stay informed. If you're watching this, you're already ahead of the curve. Most people won't see the warning signs until it's too late. Staying educated on how policy affects your day-to-day life is one of the most powerful things you can do. Second, buy smart, not scared. There's no need to panic or hoard, but it's wise to gradually stock up on essentials, non-perishables, household staples, and yes, even toilet paper, while the shelves are still full and prices haven't surged. Third, support local producers. US businesses that depend on Canadian materials are under pressure. Many will struggle to adapt. If you have the chance to choose American made, do it. Local economies thrive when communities rally behind them. Fourth, make your voice heard. Tariffs may sound like political jargon, but their impact is personal. If you're concerned about how these decisions affect your cost of living, reach out to your local representatives. Let them know you're paying attention and that you expect them to do the same. And finally, don't forget, it only takes one disruption to throw everything off balance. The systems we rely on are more fragile than they appear, but if we act early, stay calm, and support each other, we don't just survive the shockwaves, we stay one step ahead of them.